Hello, folks. This is Bela. Our regular listeners and viewers will know that we've been doing an extended series of episodes that chronicle the trip that Mike Malakoff and I made in moving his boat from Brunswick, Georgia, to Burlington, Vermont. And this was took us almost 30 days to do that. And we made almost one episode every day. Actually made a total of 23 recordings that I have been slowly processing and editing and putting up and posting to our channel. And I've been doing about one a week. Well, 23 episodes doing one a week, that's like 23 weeks. It's like half a year. And in the meantime, there's been a couple of other interviews that we've done with some guests. And so what we decided to do was keep doing the Brunswick, Georgia to Burlington, Vermont trip, releasing those episodes one a week. But when I get a new episode with a new guest that I'm recording in the meantime, I'm going to interlace those or introduce them also on an alternate day, but sort of in between the Mike Malakoff episodes. So some weeks you're going to end up seeing two episodes come out. And hopefully once we get through all of the Brunswick, Georgia to Burlington, Vermont episodes, we will get then back to our regular format of episodes where Mike Wasserman and I interview people, we make some commentary, and that's sort of our regular format. But I was fortunate enough to go on this trip with Mike Malakoff, and I thought it'd be important to chronicle those into some pretty good episodes. So hope this is one of those interlaced episodes with a quote-unquote regular guest. Hope you enjoy the episode. Thank you. Hello, and welcome to the Sailing and Cruising the East Coast of the United States podcast. I'm Bela Musits.
And I'm Mike Wasserman.
Hey, Mike, today's guest is Robert Sweet. Well, he was on podcast number 153, where we talked about him buying a larger boat. Now, the interesting thing is he's landlocked in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but he keeps his boat in Florida. So we're going to talk about long distance sailing, not long distance sailing on the boat, meaning sailing around the world, but how do you get from where you live to your boat when it's a long distance away? So he's in Pittsburgh, his boat's in Florida. So how does that work? So that was really the topic of our conversation.
Great, Bela. I'm looking forward to it because as somebody who's often lived in landlocked places with a couple of exceptions, I'm fascinated by this idea because I do know some people who've done this, but it's a lot like a long distance relationship. I know people where one spouse lives in one part of the country or one part of the world and another one lives far away and they make it work, right? It wouldn't work for me and my partner, but it works fine for other people. So I'm interested to hear how this works out for Robert. So what do you think? Should we get to it?
Yeah, let's dive right into my conversation with Robert.
Okay. Welcome
back, Rob.
Glad to be back.
Yeah, good. So on our first episode, we talked about sort of your sailing experience, your decision to buy a bigger boat, kind of the process you went through. You ended up with an Island Packet 370, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And we sort of talked about that whole process, which was really good. Now, for this second episode, I wanted to talk about two things. Number one, I want to talk a little bit about, you live in Pittsburgh and your boat's in Florida. So sort of how that works, right? How you sort of find it. Like my boat's 4-hour drive away. And it's a pain. I wish it was closer. Because you got to kind of plan more. Going there is more of a production, et cetera. So I want to talk about that. And then I want to talk about your sort of initial trip to the Bahamas and sort of how that went and, the experience and sort of what you learned. So talk to me a little bit about sort of the logistics and the process and how you sort of deal with living in Pittsburgh, but your boat is in Stuart, Florida, I believe.
Correct. Yeah. So we settled on Florida of Places Caribbean because it has at least a fair number of direct flights from Pittsburgh to places in Florida. not literally to Stewart. The nearest airport to there is West Palm Beach, and there are a limited set of direct flights. So it's a little over 2-hour flight, 2.5-hour flight. And then there are far more direct flights to Fort Lauderdale, which is the next closest airport, and then further away, Orlando. So you can get to Florida in about a 2 to 2.5-hour flight, and you add on the front end time of going to the airport. And then depending on where we land, West Palm Beach is about a 40-minute Uber or rental car drive. Fort Lauderdale is about an hour and a quarter, hour and a half, depending on traffic. So I can get there sort of like in 6 hours or something of the sort.
Yeah.
And it's an airfare and some Uber charges, but so that's so it's not terrible. It's not that much worse than your drive. What I experience about it being there is after I leave the boat, after a certain number of weeks, I start to feel a certain pressure to go check out how it's doing. That's one of the things. The other thing, when I'm at the marina where I'm plugged in and can run all my systems, I have Starlink for a local network on the boat. And so then I have a video monitor I have inside the boat that I keep pointed at my bilge pump light to make sure that the bilge pump is on and functioning. It's available, not actually turned on.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
not hearing it running. And it sees enough of the other cabin that if there's something weird, I might notice it. So that's, and every day I get up, I check that camera. And now during the summer, every day I get up and I check the NOAA hurricane site.
Yes.
Because that's the other thing about being in Florida, right, is hurricane season. And because we have my granddaughter who's school age lives with us, so we can't just snowbird for the winter. Summer is really our time that we can be down there for long blocks of time. So we're going to sail in hurricane season. There's just no way around it, which I think sounds crazy to people who live anywhere from the Chesapeake north. But it's just the way it is. You know, people in Florida, they live there. That's when that's when their kids are out of school and they go sailing too and go boating.
That's right. Hey, look, here in the north, we deal with blizzards.
Right.
You see them coming. You usually get several days notice, and they last about a day. So, I'm not trying to say blizzards are nicer or not as bad or whatever as hurricanes, but certainly both of them can be very devastating. But the point is, you have notice.
Yeah. And
so here's a question I have for you with this long distance thing. So every time we go to the boat, the car's full of stuff. Because we're taking stuff or we're bringing stuff back. So when you're flying, the use that's sort of limited. How do you deal with that part?
So mostly we have the boat, out-equipped to have stuff on the boat that needs to be there. If we're going to, what are the things you would travel with? One is clothes, but we can leave spare sets of things on the boat. Another is going to be, laundry, like linen and towels, but we have laundry services at the marina. It's a very nice marina. And then food and beverages, but we pick those up there locally when we get there. So if we're going to be like when we had this big trip to the Bahamas, when we landed at the airport in West Palm, we rented a car for a day, drove up there, did all our shopping and provisioning, loaded the boat, and then dropped the car. There's a Hertz rental right there in Stewart. I dropped the car there and I walked back 1.5 miles to the boat. And the nice thing about walking any place in Florida is it's flat, not like Pittsburgh. So it's an easy walk.
Right.
So that's how and then we're, for other kinds of things, like boating supplies. We can have them shipped to the marina. They're happy to take packages. We order a lot of stuff on Amazon, just have it delivered to the marina, pick it up when we get there.
Nice. And one of the things that I find is I have my go bag. And what I mean by that is I have a bag and a box of tools that I only have one set of them. So, I keep them in the bag in the box. And so when I'm home, they're here at home. And then I throw them in the car when we go to the boat. I guess some things you just have to end up getting two sets of. It's just like having a second house that will be in Florida. You have two sets of things.
So we were fortunate in that the prior owners left us all sorts of things on this boat, including a really extensive set of tools. Like every spare part or replacement part for anything they had ever replaced, they had the original stored, loads of filters and like the things you would need, and belts. And so I have a better toolkit on the boat than I actually have at my house at this point, because my kids over the years and other people have raided my house tools.
Yes. Yes. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, because that would be a problem to transport back and forth, those kinds of things.
Yeah. So if someone was thinking of buying a boat, they're landlocked like you. They live in a place where they're kind of can't really drive to where they want to sail, and they're going to end up flying, and they're going to buy a boat that's in a far away location. What advice would you have for them? What sort of things should they think about and make sure that works for them?
So you better think about seriously how often they're going to go back and forth. I mean, I think that while your boat is in the water, if you don't put it up on dry dock for a season, you're probably going to be wanting to go back and forth like every month at least, or maybe 6 weeks. Like that's been my personal experience about when I start to get anxious about needing to go check on it. And so if you're going to travel that often, you better look at what the travel arrangements are and how painful it will be to do. Now, if you really are someone who can, say, snowbird, if it's far away like the south, where you can go for the whole winter, by and large, pop home once in a while to whatever, check on your house, and then in the summer, for half the year, just put it up on the hard, then maybe you just need a couple of trips. But if you're gonna have to go back and forth, think carefully about that. And I have a friend who has a house in the Caribbean, in Vieques, a small island off of Puerto Rico. And so I've seen what he's had to do, because same problem. He's going to check on that house often, or just going to be there. And it's an inconvenient trip to take two connections, then a third either connection or car and ferry to get, you don't want to have some crazy setup. I think that was, so that was important to me. So I was going to pick a marina that was close enough to an airport that had some direct flights.
Yeah, I think the notion of a direct flight, in my mind, would be key, because the more connections you have, the probability of getting there at your planned time starts going down exponentially.
Yes. So, as an example of that, this jumps us to the Bahamas, as my wife and I finished 10 days in the Bahamas, and we had to return here in time to pick my granddaughter up from her first effort at sleepaway camp. And so, for every child, the worst possible nightmare, right, is that no one shows up to bring you home again.
That's right.
So we made sure to book our flight back to Pittsburgh a day in advance, but from the Bahamas we had to connect. So we flew from the Bahamas into Charlotte, connecting from Charlotte. And I wisely picked Charlotte as my connection as opposed to Miami, because of the possibility that what if something happens and the flight's canceled, I could drive. And that's what we ended up having to do. We had to pick up our flight got canceled at the last minute, and we picked up a rental car and drove the 7 hours home so that we could be there the following day to go get her. So more complications with more connections you have.
Yeah. I think that would be a really important criteria, as you talk about it, for myself as well, to sort of have this ability to do a direct flight, hopefully with multiple carriers, because then the chances are it's not going to disappear.
Right.
Because if it's just one carrier, it can easily disappear.
Yeah. Our best direct flight is just one carrier, but the others that are close still, there are several options to Fort Lauderdale.
And Pittsburgh's a pretty big airport, so I mean, it's
not as small as Albany, which is probably where you would fly out of, I'm guessing.
That's right. Albany's a pretty small airport, although there's a lot of good flights to Florida because there's a lot of snowbirds.
Want to go.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, excellent. So, was there anything else in that part of the segment that
I would just say that, knowing what resources are on the ground, boat repair wise, having contacts of people who can do work on the boat, who are readily available or could rescue the boat. Like, so if I wake up and I see my bilge pump is running and I see there's water in the boat, I need someone who can get there right away. And you can't count on marina staff to do that. So building up that network of local individuals who, there's lots of them who will work on boats, and they live their life in various odd jobs, captaining, repairing, they know how to do all the different systems.
Yeah, just like there's people who will watch over your vacation home, right?
Yep.
Come by once a week to check it, mow the lawn, or whatever. The same thing exists. There's that similar network in sort of the marina world.
Yes.
Yeah, very nice. That's good advice. That's good advice. Because as I think about that, our marina where I'm at is there's no one there on weekends except for the dock folks. That's it.
Yeah.
There's nobody else. It's everything else is shut down. So super. Okay. So let's talk about you bought the boat. It's your first big boat. You went out with a captain. We talked about this last episode. And a couple times you're starting to get comfortable with it. Now you're going to do this big trip across the Gulf Stream from Florida. So talk to us about that.
Yeah. So we decided for our first journey to hire the captain to go with us. Kind of show us the ropes the first time across. And you could do, so from Stewart, you have a lot of different options. You can go about 70 miles into the west end of Bahamas. That's your closest option across the Gulf Stream. The Gulf Stream is about 50 miles wide. So it's, there's a few miles on either side of that trip that you're not in it. You can shoot straight across the Gulf Stream and then either stop at an island in the middle of the Bahama Bank called Great Sail and anchor. That's going to be about a 18-hour, 20-hour trip. Or you can keep going then into the Abacos, which is where we were going to end up for the summer. And that's about a 27-hour trip or so. And so our captain was saying, look, the best thing to do, you get going, is just go straight through. We were not too worried about the sailing, but, just never having done it, we wanted to have them. But we were more worried. We have not done overnight sails where we were, we have to run the boat at night and be awake. And we didn't know if we'd have the stamina. And so we had him with us. And so the three of us set off in daylight, crossed the Gulf Stream in daylight. And the big thing, I know a lot of people get very nervous about the Gulf Stream. The big thing is just picking the right weather window, show good judgment about the weather. We were a little nervous about the possibility of pop-up thunderstorms. It's always possible. And we had not sailed ourselves in a squall yet. Still really haven't. We've had them in our vicinity, but not experienced them. So we thought it'd be good to, again, in case a squall popped up, to have him with us on that long journey. Worked out well. It was a beautiful sail. It was mostly a motor sail. The wind is mostly in your face to get to the Bahamas. It's east or southeast. So we motor sailed, but beautiful daytime crossing the Gulf Stream. We had 1 to 2 or 3 foot waves, not much. That was the plan. 10 knots of wind, very, very pleasant. And then crossed the Bahama Bank at night, which was stunning. Oh my gosh. Being up in the middle of the night in the dark, no light pollution. I mean, on the distant horizon, you could see the lights of West Palm Beach that were then, 80 or 90 miles away or something, 100 miles away. And so during the day, the captain napped a lot. My wife and I ran the boat. We have the autopilot, so it's not too tiring to run the boat. And there were, if you don't have any obstacles to worry about, you just
right
put the course and go. And then I don't think I napped during the day. I stayed up into the early part of the evening. Captain got up. I think I went to bed around midnight. I slept till about 4, got back up and took over from him. My wife just slept through the night. She was tired. And it all went pretty smoothly. He woke me up at about 1 a.m. to run up on deck. And I have to tell you, when you're tired, sleep deprived, and you're on you don't have sea legs yet, and you try and hop out of bed and run up on deck that way. I was lucky I didn't go to ground bumping into something. And it was
Yeah.
all because there was a launch from probably from Cape Canaveral. There was like a rocket launch. It was really cool he wanted me to see it.
Oh, yes. Yes. Well,
This one didn't
I've
explode.
yeah. Oh, good. I've said this many times that there's nothing more magical, spiritual, I don't know what the right adjectives are, than being out in the open ocean or just offshore at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
There's just something about, on a cloudless night
Yeah.
with maybe a partial moon, to me, I find it so special.
It was outstanding. It was really worth the price of admission just for that. We had no moon and no clouds and lots of stars. Really fabulous. And I have this wonderful little app on my phone that you can point at any part of the sky and it shows you all the stars and the constellations.
Oh, yes.
That there are.
Yes.
That was a lot of fun.
So, I've done a fair number of overnights, and not a ton of them, but a fair number. And my two sons have not done any overnights, and scheduling, of course, with them is a challenge because they have families and they have kids and they got jobs, and I'm retired.
Right.
So anyway, one of the things that I've been trying to get them to do with me, because they both want to do an overnight, is say, you know what? Why don't we just go to the boat and just get on the boat 3:00 in the afternoon and just sail until 1:00 in the morning in one direction, and then turn around and come back. You don't have to have a destination, right? Because the overnight experience is the overnight experience. It really doesn't matter where you're going to, but it's this notion of being out at night, because it can be, if it's cloudy and it's dark, it can be sort of disorienting, particularly if you can see lights, of shore. I have a real challenge with trying to figure out how far away those lights are. And there's so many red and green lights on shore. It's crazy.
Yeah. I would, having tried to get into new harbors in daytime, which is really confusing already, I would never try and do that at night. Even in a harbor I know well, I would be a little worried about how well it would go. And I found that, at least for my old eyes, that even, you do the night settings on all your instruments. So it's like this red text. I had a very hard time being able to read that. It was that low contrast. The instrumentation, even though I could see it perfectly during the day, was not so easy for me to read at night. And you worry about whether you're going to see other boats and are they on the AIS. I agree. There's some of that, but mostly it's peaceful. We didn't see, not too many things came by us to worry us.
Right. And I think, like with many things in life, the anxiety that you build up in your own mind, having never done it, is often much worse than the actual event. When you do it, I go, this wasn't that bad. I
tried to keep in mind that so many people do this, successfully, that not to get overwrought about it. And I think, unfortunately, my wife also is not prone to that kind of worry. So, because I don't know if this is true. I was sort of told that one of the reasons that the prior owners decided to get rid of the boat after having put a lot of money into it for only a few years was that the spouse was not willing to take the boat on these trips without hiring a captain every time.
Yeah.
I was fairly confident we're going to do this once with the captain, but not every time, unless we just need an extra hands, right? I would get a crew or hire someone, volunteer or hired if I need extra hands for watches. Because I don't know if the two of us could do watches over a long sail, just the two of us.
Yeah, I agree.
Physically, that would be hard, physically, mentally.
Yeah. I've done trips with 2 people, and I've done trips with 3 people, passages, multi-day passages, and 3 people, for at least for me, makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
I could do 3 people for 10 days.
Right.
But 2 people after about 2 or 3 days, I'm burnt.
Yeah. Yeah. I might be willing to do 2 people for a day. I wouldn't start with more than like a 24 or 28 hour kind of thing.
I agree. You can power through a day or 2 with 2 people, but 3 people makes a huge difference.
So with this, we arrived in Abacos in daylight. We got to where we're going to check in. So you have to
Yes.
check in customs. We have to fill out paperwork ahead of time online. There's an online system. They require you to pre-fill and print out the forms and bring them into the customs office after you pull into the harbor. We checked in at Green Turtle Key at the Green Turtle Club Marina. So with the captain, and we spent the day there. Spent the night there. We paid the money for the marina fee, got some air conditioning on board, got some good sleep, caught up, and had a good meal at the restaurant. And then the next day we sailed down Abaco sort of towards the main town, Marsh Harbor, anchored out. And then the day after that, we dropped our captain off at the airport, took the dinghy in. So in those three things, we learned a few things. So the good news is we were successfully driving the boat up to docks, and just the two of us were docking it successfully, not running into stuff. Pulling in and out of our slip at our marina back in Florida is very challenging. There's a cross current, and we've never been that good at it. So I was worried about it.
Yes.
But here in the Bahamas, in the still water, turns out we knew what we were doing. And then we anchored with him, so we had a refresher on anchoring, which is something actually we feel pretty good about. I think our boat has a very decent sized anchor, oversized for it, and so we've never had any problems with dragging. And then we learned some things about anchoring the dinghy when we had to when we had to go drop him off. There were all these barnacles on the pilings at the dinghy dock, and he was explaining how we have to anchor the back of the dinghy to pull it away so that we don't cut up the dinghy and the barnacles, which we wouldn't have thought of on our own until we had sliced through our dinghy.
Right.
So we learned about working the dinghy anchor and how to tie up successfully, and then he was gone and we were on our own.
Wow.
And that was the nervous moment, right? Like, how's this going to go? But we pulled off, running the dinghy, anchoring several places, sailing. We didn't so much go for destination. Like, we went for some big sails, even though we were only going a short distance. We just sailed the boat a lot ourselves to learn how to sail in different conditions and directions and practice our skills. We moored successfully the first time. It only took us about 10 shots to get the ball. The second time we got it on the first try. So, and we docked it and pulled into these little skinny harbors. Everything went very well. We didn't ground the boat until the last day. We ran onto some soft sand, but floated off in about 20 minutes. So it was all, we were very pleased with ourselves.
Very nice.
And the only mistake I think we made of this whole thing is we kind of, in the enthusiasm, overdid it, right? It's easy to get very tired sailing a boat. I mean, just while the boat's in motion, just keeping your body upright, right? And I don't know how it is on your boat. The island packets have these narrow cockpits, which are kind of they keep you safe at sea in rough weather, right? They're tight, and so you're not going to get thrown from side to side too easily. But it also means that every time you want to get behind the helm and out from there, you're going up on the seats and down. So you're like, and then every time you're in the salon, you're up and down the ladder. So you are doing a lot of steps and a lot of walking that you wouldn't do necessarily in your house or at your office. And that's without cranking on winches and pulling.
That's right.
And
when you're out in this and there's a sea swell, just the muscles you need to stand up, right?
Yeah.
You're constantly, swaying left to right and trying not to fall over.
Yeah,
it is very tight. So when you guys think about, sailing from point A to point B, do you think about sailing for 3 hours, 4 hours? What do you use for your guide there?
I think it's a little bit, I'd say that 3 or 4 hours is fairly pleasant if you don't get too tired, but it also depends what you're doing on the other end. So, the one day we really kind of overexhausted ourselves. We had gone out for snorkel in the morning. We motored to another spot, went out for another big snorkel, right? Came back and then started sailing. We were just going to sail a little bit, but then some bad weather came up. We said, let's just keep going and get to our harbor, which turned into a much longer sail, and that was too much. So I think,
Yeah.
I think keeping it to a few hours, if I'm going to, especially if I want to do anything else, if it's just a sailing day, maybe a 5 or 6 hours of just sailing would be fine if that's all you're doing. But if you really want to get on and off the boat, go into town, walk to a restaurant, go for a swim, whatever, then I would keep it shorter.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know there's lots of resources for sort of planning your trip to the Bahamas, there's, all sorts of things. Did you find any particular ones very helpful?
So I use a collection of 3 things in advance to plan the trip, besides, or maybe 4 things. So one is local knowledge of our captain, who had spent many years in the Bahamas, right? That's like probably the most invaluable advice. And he had a great attitude about like, don't be a hero, right? You don't have to sail to weather. You don't have to sail, like pick an easy day. You're going a long way. Just turn the motor on. Just get there as fast as you can. Don't be a hero. Make things as easy and comfortable for yourself as possible. But then he knew a lot about local spots. Online resources I use a lot. I have apps for both B&G Sea Maps and Navionics, the Garmin maps. So those have lots of things that are annotated on them. The other really useful resource I found, because I know Garmin has this thing called Active Captain where people leave comments and stuff.
Yes.
I didn't find that was that useful for the Bahamas, but there's another app called No Foreign Land. And I think that maybe it's more heavily subscribed by Europeans, but there are a lot of them who come to the Caribbean and Bahamas, and that had loads of sites annotated with information about the site, marinas, mooring balls, dive sites, snorkeling sites, shops, like anchorages and qualities of the anchorages and the wind protection at all of them.
Yes.
What people do for the Bahamas, you don't get a lot of wind protection from the land. It's kind of low. So the whole thing people do is they pick their anchorage based on which way
the wind direction.
Right? And you have to be careful about it. So that was super useful. And then the last thing, there are these Explorer charts, the Bahamas Explorer chart books. And those were on the boat, so I couldn't use them. I didn't have them at home, so I'm doing all my prep online at home. But on the boat, we have those. So for each of our areas, they have a bunch of detailed information that's helpful. But I found that they were not as comprehensive as the online resources.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Those are always those good things to share, because what did you say? No Foreign Land? Was that the name of the app?
Land. It's No Foreign Land. It's all one word. Foreign Land. It's a great app. I've been very pleased with it. And it's also a networking app. So, you list your boat and people can find you.
Sure.
You see all the boats that are anchored around. You could reach out to someone if you wish.
Yeah. And how did you find, did you guys interact with other boaters, or did you guys, some people like this whole social aspect of boating. Other people tend to like being more solitary. What worked for you guys?
Well, we were definitely more solitary, and that's kind of more our nature. I imagine there'll be some organically arising boater interactions that we'll have, or we'll have contacts of people who are more pro-social, and then we'll connect us with other people. But it's not our nature generally to be social butterflies. And we're definitely not, there are 2 kinds of sets of activities in the Bahamas, the cruisers, right? There's the real party scene, and then there's the nature isolation lovers, and we're more in the latter category. In fact, one of the islands we anchored is called the Great Guana Cay. It's very famous in the island because it's very popular, and it has 2 very famous cruisers bars, Grabbers and Nippers. And so we went and we hiked, we got off the boat, we dinghied in, and we hiked through town to this beach we saw that looked like it'd be beautiful. And indeed, it was this stretch, I can't even tell you how long, of beautiful white sand, like flower sand. There were 2 of us, and then there were like 3 young men off, like a little, like no one, right? It was just stunning. And that Bahamas water is I don't even know how to describe the color of it. It's just unbelievable. Yeah. And so we're there, And then I would say, like, all right, we didn't really like the walk we did through town. Let's walk back along the beach. We can see, oh, maybe 500 yards or so down the beach. It looks like there's some civilization. And we walked back there, and that was the Nippers Beach Bar. And like there, we're like at some kind of giant spring break club. It was like these two worlds coexist side by side. It was very so. When we have several adult children, when they come to join us, they're 30-ish, give or take a year or two. I'm thinking that we're going to take them so they can see both sides. They may see which something they can decide which suits them.
Yeah, but that's nice that you can go to a place where within a few hundred yards you can pick A or you can pick B.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
At
that spot you have the choice. Other islands you might be all A.
Yes. Excellent. Is there anything else about your? Oh no, let's talk about. I think you mentioned to me before we started recording that your boat is still over in the Bahamas, and you're keeping it there for at least a period of time. Talk to me about that process, how you decided where to keep it, etc.
Yeah. So we got advice from our captain about what we thought would be a very protected harbor. It is, like it would typically be considered sort of a hurricane hole. It's a man-of-war harbor. It's very narrow. It's round, it's surrounded on almost all four sides by land. It's set back, and there's moorings there. And so you call Buddy, who runs the moorings, and we reserved one. It's not, moorings are cheap, relative to marinas. So we got a mooring ball there. Now, the most recent real hurricane experience in the Bahamas back, I think it was 2019, was Dorian, which was a disaster. It was a Category 5 plus, like Category 5 doesn't even begin to describe it. And it took a direct hit on that part of the Bahamas, Marsh Harbor and Man of War. And they lost a lot of boats in that harbor for that. It would be a perfectly secure harbor, I'm sure, for a tropical storm, a Cat 1, a Cat 2.
Yes.
So Buddy, so we got that. We thought, like, that's great. We have a secure place. We'll keep it there. We don't expect much happening. Really, the big storms are usually September, October, not June, July, or early August. We'll leave it there. And it was all great. Our plan was great. And then when we told Buddy we're going to be gone for 2 weeks, he said, well, if there's a storm coming, you have to move the boat. I said, what do you mean? That was my whole purpose of getting this morning. I said, how can I do that? If there's a big storm coming, I'm not going to be able to get a flight here. I'm in Pittsburgh. Well, you have to get someone to move the boat. I said, well, no one's going to be able to get a flight here. He said, Buddy, do you want to do it?
Right.
I'm not sure what happens. So I don't know what happens if there's a storm. We did our best to we stripped some things off the boat or lashed down stuff. Lashed the dinghy on securely, lashed down some of the solar. I didn't take down the two head sails. I could have, but there's really not anything that's going to happen these 2 weeks. I think if it was later in the season or we knew there was a real storm coming, I'd take those down. Turns out our Dodger can't really be removed. That's a big problem. That's like a big windshield that's going to take a direct hit from anything.
Oh, wow.
It's very interesting. If you undo the flaps of the Dodger, so you could maybe try and roll them up, but they hold up the whole framework of the Dodger, which folds back down. Once it folds back down, the other part of the Dodger is now directly catching the wind, and that part is sewn on and can't get removed. So we're just going to have to hope for. I mean, this wasn't built with hurricane avoidance in mind.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, and we're going to fly back in 2 weeks. My granddaughter's leaving to spend time at her dad's for a month. So my wife and I will go back down for the month. Nice.
Very good. And then I assume at some point in time, you're going to bring it back to Florida?
The idea is that, before my granddaughter returns in early August, that we'll bring it back to Florida. And we'll see if my wife and I may do it as a bunch of hops, shorter sails, so we can maybe cut it down to the longest sail would be like an 18-hour downwind motor sail.
Yes.
And I feel like if we rested before that, we could probably do that, as long as, again, we'll be careful about, crossing the Gulf when the wind is good, waves aren't too too strong, but we're not too worried about it. Maybe I'd feel differently if we get caught in a squall.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think the challenge with squalls is the good thing about squalls, particularly if it's during the day, it can be more challenging at night, particularly if it's really dark. You can see them coming.
Right.
And get prepared. I mean, take the sails down.
Yeah.
You know, you can get a big blow, and you can say to yourself, "Oh, that's going to miss us," but it might not.
Yeah. Yeah. My current plan is shorten sail if I think there's anything out there, and not worry about getting someplace fast until it shows up. Just have the sail shortened, because it's not easy at any, I think, for anyone, but like this age, winching in a bunch of stuff, with, you know, even with like normal wind, with 10 or 12 knot winds is not so easy to do. It's hard work. And if you have to like winch in 2 or 3 sails all of a sudden, I would not want to count on getting them in time.
What I have found is that, let me just say, what I have learned is to reef early.
Yeah.
And when I hit 15 knots, I start reducing sail. Not because I necessarily have to, but it's so much easier for me to bring my sails in at 15 knots than it is at 20.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That,
to your point, exactly. Right.
This is the thing in this time we've been learning. I've been trying things I've read about online, but not had a chance to do before. And one of them is thinking about when to reef and what the wind speed is like, and trying to do things like blanket the Jenny with the main so I can get it in easier. Boy, that makes a big difference. It's very hard to pull in a big Genoa. You know, we have like it must be 130% Jenny, and that's a lot of sail to haul if the wind is really right on it. So I agree with you. If it's going to be going up past 15, I'd rather shorten that sail ahead of time. And what's the difference if I make 5.5 knots or, you know, versus 6.8 or something? I don't
and I'm a heck of a lot more comfortable.
Yeah.
The sort of tension level in the boat goes way down.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway.
One of my captains suggested I buy one of those little tilt meters for the
yes.
So you can see the angle of heel directly. Yes. So you keep it under 15. It's even people are happier under 10. When it starts getting to 15, people are
That's right.
Nervous.
And I think one of the challenges when you're the captain is that we all have our comfort levels, right? And for you, it might be 15 degrees. For me, it might be 12 degrees. And so when you're captain of the boat, you need to take in consideration what the comfort level is of all of your passengers.
Right. Right.
Because once people stop having fun, it's over.
Yeah. You don't want to traumatize them.
Yeah.
And, I think that, you know, as I think about sailing, a lot of my philosophy is on injury avoidance. And that's part of my aging process is I'm trying to, you know, I ski in a way that avoids injuries. I ride my bike in a way to try and minimize the risk of injury. That one's harder. And I want to do that with sailing too. And so, being up on heel or suddenly shifting to a heel, someone can go flying across the salon, can go flying across the cockpit. And, you know, it's easy to land something on something hard. And if you're in your 60s or we're capped at 60s, but you could break a rib. You could there are a lot of things that could go wrong from something that otherwise would be innocuous. So it's much better to keep the boat calm.
And you got to think about, to your point, okay, so there's 2 of us on the boat and I just fell over and broke my wrist.
Right.
I am now useless.
Yes. Right.
Other than barking orders, I'm useless.
Yeah. So that's the other thing. You have to keep both of us intact when it's just the 2 of us, right?
That's right. That's right. So, you know, all of those things kind of rattle around in my brain. And, you know, and if you break a wrist, okay, now I'm wherever I am, I'm on a boat. How I got a doctor. What am I going to do? Right. Coast Guard's not going to come get me for a broken wrist.
No, you have to figure out how you're getting someplace to take care of it, and how you're taking care of it in the meantime.
Yeah.
I'm considering signing up for one of these sailboat wilderness medicine courses
Oh yeah.
this coming fall. I thought that might be good. I mean, I am a physician, but not an emergency physician. Right? I'm a
Yes.
geriatric psychiatrist. I'm good from the neck up, but not anyplace else. So I need to learn some things.
Yeah. Well, yes, taking care of from the neck up is good. Yeah. I'm an EMT, and that's helpful,
Yeah.
right? That's helpful to sort of take care of that type of stuff. So anyway, very good. Is there anything else that we haven't chatted about that you'd like to share with our listeners?
No other than to say that, boy, I'm really glad we took the plunge and did this. We spent our first 3 days and nights where it was just the two of us on the boat, anchored out under these gorgeous sunsets, just stunning. And we just kept looking at each other. It was like, pinching ourselves like this was the best decision we ever made. And I don't know it will last, but and there's a lot of love-hate with boats, but boy, that's such an amazing experience to have. And so I'm very glad we took the plunge. There could have been a lot of reasons not to do it. A lot of our family and friends maybe privately thought we were nuts, publicly would say, "Oh, you're so brave," or whatever, but privately thought.
Right. Brave is a code word for nuts.
Yeah. My brother, who is a boater and a sailor, says like, "Oh yeah, I'll come sailing with you like in December." He's not going to sail with me during hurricane season. It's like the whole idea is too overwhelming. So I feel like I'm just glad we did it. I'm glad we trusted our instincts about buying this boat at that moment, that time, and didn't feel like we had, as you talked about, like to stick to our whole preconceived plan.
Very good. Excellent. Hey, Rob, it's been a real pleasure chatting with you over these 2 episodes. I really enjoyed it. And how about when you guys get your boat back to Florida this fall? Why don't we maybe think about doing another call and sort of talk about your second? Now you're going to go like for a month to the Bahamas, right?
and have guests on board, which will be different.
Yeah. So that adds a whole nother degree of interesting elements to it, and then bringing the boat back. So that'll probably be another good episode. I'd love to have you back.
I'd love to do it, and I think happy to do that. I'll definitely fill it in, and I'll try and think a little bit more. I feel like this whole topic of geriatric sailing is it's of some interest.
Yes.
You mentioned that island packet community, and if you look at who's on those websites, they're mostly people in later life, retirees or older. And I think there's probably a lot of wisdom out there and necessary advice, because it's just different thinking about the risks at later in life than what a 30-year-old is thinking about.
That'd be an interesting topic, and if you're game for putting something together on that, and have a conversation about it, I think that'd be good. Because as you were saying that, I'm thinking, I just recently did this trip from helping Mike Malikoff, who's a listener and had been on the podcast a couple of times, move his boat from Brunswick, Georgia, up to Lake Champlain. So we came up the ICW, some of it inside, some of it outside, up the Hudson River, etc. And I would say the breakdown of people that we met and saw on the trip was 50 to 60% of them were 50 years and older.
Right.
Right. So that's sort of at least half of them were that much. And then there's a little 10 to 20% of younger couples. And then, 10% of couples with kids.
Right.
And then 5% of single older guys by themselves.
Yes,
right?
Understood.
But the point is that a huge part of that is people over 50.
Right.
And I think putting together, an episode on that's a great idea. We should do that.
I got thinking about it because I heard, I'm listening to all your old episodes, still catching up. I'm not quite current yet, but 2 that I listened to recently that made me think of this. One, you interviewed a woman who wrote a whole book about traveling with families. And and you focus a lot about thinking about children. How do you plan
Yes.
for children. And not too long before that, you had talked to, I don't recall their names, but the father's son who took then the grandfather, I guess,
Yes.
across
Across the Atlantic.
And
Yes.
didn't talk about what the grandfather's experience. I thought about that a lot. Like, what was it like to be that much older and
Yes.
traveling? Because he wasn't one of the interviewees.
That's right.
But I remember wondering, like, how'd it go for.
Oh, well, I do know that Grandpa, I forget which island they stopped at first. I always get whichever island you go to on your way over. It's about 3/4 of the way over. He got off the boat there. Now, maybe that was planned. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But that's a big endeavor what they did.
Yeah, that's a
but
bold
I think you're right. I think I love to do the episode about the kids, particularly because our grandkids come on our boat, and I've talked about this on the podcast. The name of our boat is Paradox, and they have coined the word Camp Paradox. So they come out for the last 3 years. They've come out together for a week with my wife and I, and this year they're each going to come separately for a week. So this will be the first time they come separately for different weeks, and then they're going to come together for another week. So they're going to have a total of 3 weeks. And so thinking about how I'm going to keep this, now 11 and 8-year-olds occupied. And when they originally did it, it was like, 8 and 5.
Right. Easier to.
And my wife is very good at sort of keeping kids entertained, but still, okay, we're not going to go sail for 10 hours. We're going to sail for 3 or 4 at the most. And we're going to go someplace where you can get off the boat, and someplace that has a pool. And so all of those things, I've thought a lot about those, but to your point, older people sailing and sort of pacing yourself, as we've already talked about a little bit, is important. That'd be a good episode.
Well, I'll think more about it.
Super. Hey, thanks again for being on the podcast. Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Yep. Thank you, Bela. Take care.
Cool interview, Bela. I was really interested to hear how this would go, and Robert didn't disappoint. So there's an interesting story there. What were your key takeaways?
Yeah, I thought this was fascinating to me. I mean, we sort of have, my boat's a 4-hour drive away. And every time we're driving to the boat, I'm thinking, gosh, I wish the boat was closer. And Robert's like, 4-hour flight away from his boat. So yeah, there's a little more lead time on the flights. But there's some similarities. So here's, I think, what the things I took away from my conversation were. Number one is you want to hopefully be at a place where there's direct flights from where you live to where your boat is. So you want the non-airplane part of the commute, number one, to be short, and you want the airplane part of the commute to be one flight and not a connection, because everyone knows the connections are where things go wrong. So I think that was a good key takeaway. Number two, make sure this works for you. And he did that. If you listen to episode 153, where it was part one of my conversation with Robert, he talked about how they sort of tested this out. They chartered boats. So they got used to packing stuff into a suitcase, hopping on an airplane, going someplace, getting off the airplane, sailing on a boat for a week, and then coming back, right? And how sort of logistics of that stuff works. So they've figured out that works for them. I think the other piece is you got to sort of figure out the logistics of. So whenever I go to the boat, in my car, I have a big tool bag. I have spare parts. I have all the stuff that you need to take care of essentially another house. And so if you're on an airplane, that's a little different. So how are you going to handle that? Some marinas are wonderful at accepting packages from either you or from Amazon or from other suppliers, right? They're very good. They have a system for taking a package in and holding it for you. Other marinas, not so much. So you may want to check that out. You got to think about who's going to watch over the boat if you're gone for a month. Some marinas provide that service. Some places have individuals who will provide that service. Just like if you have a vacation home someplace and you're only there for short periods of time, there are people who will watch over your home. They'll mow the lawn, they'll cut plow the snow, etc. There's similar services available for boats. So you got to kind of sort that out. I'm lucky my son lives a 5-minute walk from the boat, and so he can check it over and see if it needs any help or assistance or any attention. So I think those were, for me, kind of the big key takeaways. What anything spring into your mind, Mike?
Yeah, no, I really had a lot of the same thoughts. And I remember to some of the times when you had some big storms where your boat was docked, and the fact that your son was right there and could give you, could take care of things and give you a report and all that was super helpful. And, sure, you're paying somebody to do it, but it's such a big investment. That would seem to be a pretty big leap for me, but it makes sense. If you have a trusted person watching over your house, and plenty of people do this who have second houses, it kind of makes sense. But yeah, I was remembering those times when there were some big storms.
Yeah.
And, you've been lucky. None of the storms have damaged your boat when there's been hurricane remnants and tropical storms and things like that. But especially in Florida,
right,
there's a lot of that. So,
right.
So I thought that was fascinating. It is a lot like a long distance relationship with a partner or a spouse, because you have to have some trust, you have to have some systems in place, you have to have some kind of open lines of communication to make sure that your marina or your service person or whatever has things under control, and when you need to do something. And and again, just like coordinating, like things like repairs or painting, or you want to bring something, right? This is
right,
a little bit of a challenge, but like the friends that I know that have good relationships that are long distance, you can make it work. It just takes a little different definition, I think, of the kind of the relationship you have with your boat, right? It's just a little different than say if you have it docked 10 minutes away from where you live. It's just a different flow and a different pattern. So I think this is a neat interview to think about this kind of relationship that you have with your boat in terms of the physical location that it's at. Because this, again, might be an option for lots of people that are landlocked, that don't live near the water,
right,
that want to have a boat. And maybe they didn't think about this, but this is feasible, totally.
Right. The other thing that we talked about that I want to touch on just a little bit is sort of like trip planning, because they went to the Bahamas. And one of the things that always intrigues me is, how do you, particularly just having come up the East Coast from Brunswick, Georgia, all the way up to Lake Champlain. So how do you sort of plan that trip? There's great trip planning resources out there. There's all sorts of apps that you can get, as you can imagine, to help you plot out your route. They have all sorts of comments from previous people who went there, making comments about, what worked well, what didn't work for them. There's Facebook groups for various different activities, as one can imagine. And he talked about, Robert talked about an app that I hadn't heard about before called No Foreign Lands app. And I'm going to have to check that out. And that had a lot of information, particularly about places that's really focused on people who are not local. Coming in, you plop down someplace, and now you're trying to sort of figure out where to go and what to do. The other thing that for me, I have found very helpful is I ask other people. So I'll go, when I'm at the marina and someone tells me, hey, we're going to Block Island for the weekend, I'll say, okay, so when you go there, where do you stay? What do you do? What sort of facilities do you use? What's the better marina to go at? Or do you anchor out? If you anchor, which anchorage do you go to? And that 5-minute conversation is a wealth of information that's very efficient. So I've rely a lot on that. If I can, I try to ask local, people at the marina or the place where the marina I happen to be at, have you ever been to this place? And they're always helpful in sharing information with you. And I'll tell you a funny story about Newport, which is a very crowded place to go to during peak season. And I was talking to one of the boats that's not far from us at the marina, just a few slips away. And I said, so when you go there, where do you stay? Well, we get a marina from Bob. And I go, oh, who's Bob? Who's Bob? I haven't seen Bob on any of the, Navionics or any of those active captain applications that have that kind of knowledge on it. Oh yeah. He owns like 10 mooring balls in Newport Harbor. Here's his phone number. What you do is you call him and you tell him how big your boat is. He'll tell you if he has a mooring for you. And then you meet him on the corner of, 2nd Street and Main Street, and you give him your $50. So,
wow.
I mean,
That's cool.
He goes, I've been using Bob for 10 years. He goes, it works great,
Old school.
but it's old school. And the only way you learn about it is through word of mouth. So these apps are great, but don't rely on them 100%, I guess is my word of advice there.
Cool. I like it. Well, what do you think? Should we wrap this up?
Yep, I think it is. Time to wrap this one up, Mike.
All right, listeners, thanks for joining us yet again for another episode. We hope you found it as interesting and thought-provoking as we did. If you have questions about what we've discussed, please feel free to get in touch with us. Our email is sailingtheeast, that's all one word, @gmail.com.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. We're now available on YouTube, so if you'd rather listen to us there, that's available as well. So signing off from upstate New York. Hope to see you soon.
And from over here in Münster, Germany, listeners, thanks, and we'll see you all next time.